Today, we'll be looking at the beast tribe that exists above the clouds. A race of large bird-like people who have lived entirely isolated in said sea of clouds. Until recently when they were discovered and some of their islands colonized by Ishgard. Colonialism. The race of developers themselves called the, and I quote, Chubby Ixal. Today we'll be looking at the Vanu Vanu. The Vanu Vanu. The flightless birds living in the sky. There's a lot of stuff I want to try and squeeze into this video and still keep it under 20 minutes, so let's just jump straight into it. Their physical characteristics. Big, plump, and juicy birds, hefty and round, porty, pudgy, and thick. All these words would probably make a Vanu Vanu shyly blush, as all these chunky round boys and girls have a very different idea of what attractiveness is. All these words are compliments to them. However, don't be fooled. Most of their body is actually comprised of powerful muscles due to their harsh environment and their culture. They are surprisingly agile and swift when they want to be, and, unlike most birds I know, are even able to go extended periods of times without trying to poop on your head. They have a sharp beak-like mouth and feathers that cover their entire bodies besides their feet, which is instead covered with scales. Now, talking about their feathers, fun fact. Vanu Vanu go through a molting season, where all their old feathers fall away to make room for new plumage. However, the old feathers tend to get stuck, look really bad, and give the Vanu Vanu a really uncomfortable itch. For this reason, the simple comb is considered as vital to the Vanu as the 2B bottoms are to the cat girls. It's something all of them own. Regularly combing and grooming is part of their life. So just like birds, they preen themselves. But unlike most birds, they lack the most important feather, flight feathers. Which is kind of funny considering it would be the most useful feature when living on floating islands who knows how many feet into the air, where one tiny slip would have them recreate a Wile E. Coyote scene. A one-way trip to visit their god. So let's talk about their god and their religion. Bismarck, the Lord of the Mists. The god and protector of all Vanu Vanu, the great white whale who is believed to be compassionate, gentle, caring, and loving, the protector of the Sea of Clouds. But how did this god come to be worshipped by the Vanu? Well, let's see in his origin myth. Long ago, the sky was void of all clouds. Nothing but a vast blue canvas. During this time, a white whale calf was born in the shallows of an unnamed island to a pod of sea-dwelling whales. This whale was Bismarck, and unfortunately for him, he was different. And as some of us will know and had maybe experienced, being different as a child is a social death sentence. He was endlessly mocked, picked on, and generally bullied by his grey-skinned siblings. The racists. Every moment of every day was torture. Until there came a day they decided to actually just kill him. The Vanu believe the gods saw all this and wept at Bismarck's pitiful fate. Thus, when his tortured soul was ascending to the heavens to finally be at peace, the gods be like, nah, and returned him to life. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was Bismarck, I'd be a little upset about this. However, thankfully, he wasn't just reborn. He was reborn with divinity. The white whale was much larger, could control wind ether, and fly through the air. And as he flew, all of his breaths billowed out and created the clouds, until the sky was a sea of tranquil mist. Bismarck looked upon this sea of clouds he created and saw how peaceful it was, and became resolved to create here a sanctuary for all those who had suffered as he had, a haven from the hell below. Thus Bismarck returned to the earth and lifted islands into the sky. On one of these islands were the Vanu Vanu, who now provided all they needed to survive and thrive in peace, isolated on their floating home. And survive and thrive the Vanu Vanu did. They grew into a very unique culture and society that value resourcefulness and peaceful conflict resolution. So let's go over that culture and society. The Vanu Vanu are split into 4 tribes, with each tribe having their own territory, village, their own tribal color, symbol, and are governed entirely separately. The only thing that's the same across all the tribes is their general culture and the type of government. They are all ruled by a chieftain. This chieftain's word is law, though he is advised on matters by the tribe's elders and shaman. Fun fact, the Vanu Vanu shaman often create a mixture of moromote spores and blue cloud coral. They turn it into, and I quote, a fine blue powder that they then snort to see visions of the future. Their job is to get high and then give the tribe's ruler advice, which is amazing. Let's briefly go over the 4 tribes and their history, starting with their history. Long ago, these 4 tribes lived together in harmony.
Then, everything changed when the
Vundu tribe
attacked.
And that's their history. Now the tribes. The Vundu, the most powerful of the Vanu Vanu, and what we mostly fight against. They are militaristic, expansionist, and the tribe that summoned the primal Bismarck. They have a general disregard for Vanu Vanu traditions and defile their sacred lands. This is their tribal flag. Their tribal color is deep blue, and this is roughly their territory. The Bendu. This tribe is dead. Every single one of them was slain by the Vundu when they refused to submit to their rule, and everything about them was erased. Though I'd like to imagine their flag and color looked like this. Next is the Gundu. This tribe was also conquered by the Vundu. Though the Gundu initially resisted, they eventually submitted to Vundu rule and now patrol the old Bendu village. However, some couldn't stand being second-class citizens and tried to riot for their independence, which went exactly as well as you'd expect someone rioting against a dictatorial regime. After getting their beaks punched in, they fled and took refuge with the Zundu. We don't know what their symbol looks like, but their tribal color was light azure blue. Next is, of course, the Zundu, the tribe with red feathers and one that is so opening and welcoming to outsiders they had an aephorite crystal installed in their village. They only barely kept their independence from the Vundu by clever negotiations, and now have to pay a very high tax to keep said independence, until the Warrior of Light does some quests there to help them. This is roughly their territory. Their color is, surprise surprise, red, and this is their symbol. Now, because the Vanu Vanu were isolated in the clouds, they never got to trade or interact with any other race, leading them to have quite primitive technology when compared to any other race. Yes, they have good knowledge of weaving with silk and well, that's about it really. They have no knowledge of metalworking, gemworking, or leatherworking. Consequently, all their tools and weapons are made of wood, stone, and bones. However, this has changed. We've mentioned that the Sea of Clouds was eventually found by Ishgard, who placed a small colony there. But they also started trading with the Vanu. The Vanu received various metal equipments from the Ishgardians, and the Ishgardians received traditional Vanu food, because the Vanu food is really good, with one of their most delicious meals being the traditional meal called cat's foot chew. Now stop, it's not what you think it is. It is not made from cat's feet. That would be horrific and would make me want to carpet bomb their villages. It's actually made from a wild grass called cat's foot. Vanu also eat Wamorokampa and other Valkin larvae, which means that they basically really like eating bugs. They also eat dried leeches and worms freshly plucked from the soil after rain. Yum. Thankfully though, the Vanu really like these and rarely ever share these treats. I guess I should also mention sky fishing, which is only about 80 to 90% of their diet and what they usually trade. But every time I think about sky fishing, I think of the fact that there are basking sharks, jellyfish, actual freaking tornado sharks, and this literally straight out of my actual real nightmares horror flying around in this world. And if that's not horrifying to you, flying scorpions exist. So I'm not going to talk about sky fishing. Instead, we'll move on, still talking about their culture, because there's a lot more to it. Plus, we can't talk about the Vanu Vanu and not mention dancing. Dancing is incredibly important to the Vanu Vanu culture. Through their dance, they represent their tribe and their ancestors, and they take it very seriously. They consider dance an act as sacred as life and death, and dance is performed on so many different occasions. They dance in rituals before their totem poles to honor their ancestors. They dance in front of shrines to Bismarck to honor him and give him tribute. They dance at feasts to grow closer and unify with those invited. And of course, they dance before battles to demonstrate their power and that they are a force to be reckoned with. In fact, if their dance is coordinated, powerful, full of spirit, smooth and certain, it can intimidate their enemy, allowing them to be victorious before a battle even starts. No bloodshed. Because to a Vanu Vanu, your person can be seen through your dance. They sort of feel the dance's intensity and see it as a reflection of the dance's conviction. So the more coordinated, smooth, certain, full of spirit and powerful a dance, the more fear, respect and admiration you can put inside a Vanu. Lastly, for this Vanu Vanu culture marathon, we'll talk about their pets. Because without them, the Vanu would have probably all died out long ago. The Vanu rely on the Sanua, and the Sanua are integral to their culture. I mean, the Vanu can't fly, so they were and are essential to allow the Vanu to be able to travel between the floating islands. The older Sanua are used as war mounts. As the older a Sanua becomes, the more proficient it becomes at manipulating wind aether. The oldest of the Sanua being able to summon tornadoes. The Vanu Vanu also use all the parts of the Sanwa after it dies. Its scales are used to make new chief masks. Its meat is consumed. Its bones are used to make new tools. Every part of it is used and cherished. Now, unfortunately, there's also one beast that they've domesticated and is used in a quite barbaric fashion. The Paisa fights. The quickest analogy I can make here, arranged cockfights. The Vanu who partake in this will domesticate a Paisa, train it, and have it fight other Paisa for amusement, with Vanu often betting on what the results would be. Losing in these Paisa fights is seen as dishonorable towards the tribe who lost. Due to this, the losing Paisa often doesn't survive the fight, and many domesticated Paisa are trained to the death before they even get to fight to the death. And on that rather dark note, dragging your mood all the way down, let's end off looking at their culture and move on to looking at their naming conventions. Vanu Vanu names are comprised of two parts, each made of 4 letters. The first part of the name starts with any letter, followed by a vowel, and the last 2 letters being either NU or NA. For example, Linu, Rana, Unu, Puna, and so on. Now, I feel like there's something to this NU and NA, a meaning behind each, but I honestly couldn't find anything in the game, lore books, or online. And I couldn't figure it out based on what the NPCs were doing either. So either it has no meaning and the parents can just pick whichever they want, or there's a meaning behind it that I couldn't figure out. If you happen to know, please let me know. The second part of their name is always either Vanu or Vali, and these are gender-specific suffixes. Vanu is always given to male members of the tribe, whereas a Vali is always given to female members of the tribe. This is because they roughly translate to male tribe member and female tribe member respectively, and that's their first name. They will always use both parts of their name when referring to themselves or another Vanu Vanu. As for their last name, they don't have any, but also sorta do. Their tribe's name is their last name. It is their bloodline. Thus, when they introduce themselves, it's actually quite common for a Vanu to also include their tribe's name and their occupation in the tribe. For example, introducing themselves as Honu Vanu, Chief of Mighty Vundu, or Inu Vanu, Skyfisher of Resilient Gundu. And with that, we'll bring this to a close, as that's most of what we know about the Vanu Vanu. I hope you enjoyed. Next, we'll move down to the Dravanian Forelands to look at the Bug Beast Tribe, the fierce swarm that battle the dragons with one mind, and also those freed from the One Mind's rule. Next, we'll be looking at the Gnath and Vath. But for now, goodbye my friends, and have a great day.
Bum, 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 bum.